So I want to wrap up this section on analog and digital to really just kind of go into why we're going to focus on digital from here on out. And that really is this number one reason. It's cost and the associated cost of purchasing all the equipment that you could have with an analog console that comes standard with the digital board. You see, most digital boards these days have all of this covered already inside of them. If you had an analog board and you wanted compression, well, you're gonna have to go get an extended piece of equipment for that and route all of it in there. With a digital board, 9 times out of 10, that's already included on every single channel. So you're not limited on how much compression you can have for everything. You've got it there for every channel you need it for. The other thing too is the flexibility you have. Again, you can do whatever you need on a per song basis if you wanted to. You could do it on a verse to chorus to bridge basis. You can get as finite as you want in terms of having scenes set up for everything from EQs to gate to compression, setting them up for each part of the song so that way they're the best possible for each one. A lot of this stuff you can do in the studio because you have the time to go back and fix it as you edit your song. But in live scenarios, that's not always the case. But with digital boards, you actually have a little bit more control over that in real time. You can set things up during rehearsal, or maybe you have multi-track recording set up where you can actually play it back and kind of dial things in more. You can take all that time to really get things honed in at a per song basis. Now, I don't do that personally. I'm more of someone who likes to feel things as they go and flow with it, but I can set up the board how that works for me. The flexibility of digital boards is that you can actually route things and set things in a way that actually makes sense to you. It makes it easy to make those changes on the fly versus an analog console where things can be pretty spread out and not easy to access and change on the fly. So digital boards, I think, are the way to go these days, unless you're in a really small environment where you only have a couple mics, maybe a small PA system where you don't need a lot of sophistication. If you only have a couple things you're miking, maybe just some vocals, and you have a CD or an iPod that's playing music for you, then it doesn't really make sense to have all that automation and all that ability to change things. And those effects too probably aren't gonna be worth the cost. Now, when it comes to digital boards, there's a ton of options out there. So this is where you kind of have to go through knowing what it is you want out of your digital board, how you want to approach mixing things, where do you need things to go, how many inputs do you need, how many outputs do you need, what kind of processing power do you need? Do you need the ability to have plugins? Do you need to have the ability to do multi-band compression? All these kinds of more advanced stuff that we're going to get into. Some boards do great at having this ability for everything. Other boards are only good at having it for a few things. So you really have to pick and choose, and your budget's also going to affect that too. So I hope this has been helpful of kind of dialing in the idea of how to approach mixing with a digital board versus an analog board and the pros and cons to the two different styles. Again, I think digital is the way to go. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how to set yourself up for success with the digital board. And a lot of these concepts too, again, flow from analog and they actually still work in the analog world. But we're going to focus everything from here on out on digital as much as we can. So in this next series of videos, we're going to talk about how to plan and set yourself up for success. We're going to talk about patching. We're going to talk about what it means to set yourself up in a way that you can be flexible, that you can do things on the fly when you need to, that you know where everything is from in to out. And that way, when things go wrong, you know exactly where to go to fix them. So let's get to the next series where we talk about planning your patch and more.